Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to take a look at playing truck side on Inferno, and I really think this is probably the best spot to play on Inferno if you're trying to carry your team in pugs, and at the very worst, it's probably top 2. Now, there are quite a few reasons I like playing truck side. One of them is the ability for me to get aggressive. If you're comfortable getting aggressive mid or late round, if you feel like you have good reads on your opponents, then playing truck side is probably for you. One of the other things to realize is that while most people play this primarily with a rifle, this is an angle where you can play as a hybrid. You can grab an op sometimes to play certain angles that give you a good situation and make your opponents afraid of going for certain peaks. For example, if you one round have an op just sitting right here, it's going to make your opponents think twice about peeking towards boiler going for this kill that can be uncomfortable for you if you have a rifle there. So really, this is a spot where you can play a variety of different play styles. You can really vary up your play to catch your opponents off guard, and it can get a lot done. So in terms of actually playing the spot, there are a few things to realize. The first is when you should be falling back off of middle. A lot of people do this wrong in both directions. They either fall back way too early and don't give any sort of fight towards top middle, or they fight far too hard and try to hold on to it every round. Now, there are rounds when you want to consider holding on to top middle and fighting for it just to make your opponents waste a lot of utility for it. A good example would be if you can get a boost up here into truck side on top of quad. So you have one player on top and one player below, and you can have your player playing arch as well. So you're kind of giving up apartments here, and it is a little bit kind of questionable, or not questionable, but risky, because your opponents could just walk out apartments. But when you're playing this type of thing, you don't want to do it every round. And if you have a presence in apartments, it a lot of the time means that your opponents aren't going to feel comfortable just walking out on you. So don't do this every round, but this is the type of play where you can have the guy on top of quad here playing anti-flash and the guy below playing out. The reason you want to be doing this, and the reason I mention this, the guy below, if he gets blind, he can unpeek into safety, and the guy on top, if he gets blind, he's just turning around and then in the middle of the open. So I'll just mention that you usually want the guy on top turned around, the guy below peeking out, waiting for the peek, and this guy should have enough sensitivity to be able to turn him around in a reasonable period of time. And you go for a solid hold on middle there. Now, when you go for this, usually you're holding on to middle for quite a while. When you're playing a normal setup where you're playing one towards truck and one towards arch, typically you want to be giving up middle once the pressure really starts to come in. So there's a couple things you want to be doing. First, you want to be holding onto your smoke for a little while and not giving it up so early in the round, especially at lower levels or really any level in matchmaking. I often see opponents and teammates throwing a top mid smoke at the very beginning of the round. This is typically a really bad idea. Those smokes should only be used when your opponents actually have the ability to pressure you towards top middle. You can usually hold on to them for a good 20 seconds or so before you need to worry about using it. And by not smoking that, you give yourself a few other opportunities and your teammates a few other opportunities. If you don't smoke towards top middle, you can have the ability for an opper to hold this angle here and find an entry towards top middle, or to throw a flash over and find an entry towards someone near the bottom of middle. So you're making them a little bit more worried by not throwing that smoke too early, and you're allowing yourself to delay a little bit longer into the round a lot of the time. So definitely hold on to your smoke for a little while. Don't try and hold on to it for too long, because without a smoke top middle, mid is fairly easy to isolate with quick pop flashes and people jumping out of boiler. However, you want to hold on to it for a little while. And the other thing you should recognize is that a lot of the time you probably want your arch side player throwing the smoke first. The reason for this is the arch side player is a little bit more likely to be falling off in certain scenarios, moving back into arch, moving into CT, and half rotating, whereas you're going to stay middle. You're going to be able to throw that re-smoke a lot more comfortably the majority of the time. So usually have your arch side player throw that smoke first. You throw the re-smoke, and you try and hold on to top middle until probably about 40 seconds a lot of the time. Now, once that comes in, you can try and play a few different setups. The first one you can try and do is you can have your arch side player go for a pick, and you can play a little bit back, especially if you can get boosted up here. You can play an angle like this where you can get the free boiler kill, and your player towards arch can make sure that if they do cross top middle, he'll find an entry or he'll get the information and you can fall off. So you're giving a little bit of pressure towards middle. You're not giving it up for free. You don't usually want to give it up for free if you can help it. You want the information that they're there, but you don't want to try and hold it too hard because it's so easy for them to get trade kills on you, and you're kind of playing alone even though you are crossfiring in the middle there. So once you've fallen back off of middle, or I'll give you another idea, one thing you can do to hold on to it is you can try and play a flash repeat. So you can have your apartments player towards pit, watching apartments. They flash top middle and you throw a reflash, or your pit player throws a reflash for you to peek out. This is a lot more dangerous. You want to be questioning if you want to do this a lot of the time, depending on the situation, because a decent portion of the time you're just going one and done here. But this is something, again, you can consider doing just to throw your opponents off. You know, not everything that you do in a certain game has to be an optimal play. A lot of the time there are mind games involved. If you've done that once before and your opponents are taking top middle again, they're going to be more worried about that type of thing. They're going to play a little bit differently, and they might not play as aggressively as they would otherwise. Now, once you've fallen back into your passive setup, there are generally 2 or 3 setups you can think of. The first 2 rely on a player here on balcony. He can play this angle right here. This is a great angle for spotting them as they walk up truck side. You're usually going to be able to find the first entry here, and you can easily drop down and fall off. This angle also allows for the apartments player to push into apartments with a flash. So the 2 ways that you want to be playing this angle are either from graveyard or from beside site here, from lane, depending on what you want to call it. The reason these are 2 great angles is because you can use both of them to flash into apartments. So with that one, you can flash right through there, and with the graveyard one, you can flash, you know, quite normally like that. You actually don't need to step forward at all for that. These types of flashes are what I was talking about at the very beginning of the video here. Reaggressing late, getting information late in the round. You can get that information in apartments or on truck side. Now, typically with 30 seconds or 25 seconds left, your opponents are looking to start to execute. So anywhere from 40 seconds less, they're probably not just working picks anymore. They're probably trying to get something done. So when you're in that situation, you can start to consider reaggressing. Once you've given up top mid control for a good 15 seconds, that's when you want to consider the reaggression. So when you're playing graveyard, you're holding towards apartments and your teammate is holding towards truck. And if your teammate spots people truck, you can stand up and get some damage done. And this guy can reaggress as well, looking for that information, knowing that apartments is kind of slightly clear, at least the entrance. If things are going quiet and you have a feeling, and this is very important to recognize, when you're playing these spots, you get kind of a feeling, you know, usually when they execute, they do this. Usually when they execute, they do that. And so you can get a good idea or slight read of what your opponents are doing and know when flash pushing is a good idea. So getting your teammate to flash push apartments and then potentially walk up can get you a lot of information. Or if you're playing a setup, and this is the 3rd setup that I'll recommend, pit and site, this is the setup where you can potentially walk up towards truck. So your teammate is in a good situation to try and flash you towards truck side if you want it, and you know apartments is kind of held down by the guy in pit as well as truck. So he's got a good hold on both spots, even though he can't really full hold it if they do an execute. This is the type of situation where you can walk up hugging the wall like this, your teammate tosses that flash, and you peek around for information. The reason this works so well is a lot of the time in these late round scenarios, you're actually not having the greatest advantage depending on the situation. If you're in a 4-on-4 and your opponents have a decent amount of utility and they have top, mid, and banana control, you should realize that your expectations for the outcome of the round should change. It's no longer a heavily CT-sided map. In fact, your opponents might have some sort of an advantage if they have a lot of utility on you and they have full control and you have no idea what's going on. So this type of flash push gets you a lot of information, can allow a quick rotate off in a lot of situations, and again, harkening back to what I said earlier, this is the type of thing where your opponents are going to be worried about that. If you've aggressed towards middle late, spotted they're not going there, and started to flank as they're executing, they're going to worry about flanks from now on. They're going to be worried about holding on top middle in a lot of situations, and they're not going to be as comfortable taking too long going for those executes. Is really something you need to be considering. Now, the final thing I'll mention here is some early round aggressions you can do, and there's a few that I like to do myself. The first one, especially for eco rounds, is the triple apartments. The angles I like to play for this are this off angle here, plus one player in this corner and one player boiler. So you can have your arch side player, you can come towards boiler and hold it for you, while you and your apartments player hold these two angles. And by doing this, if someone tries to clear this left side corner, you're going to see him and be able to grab the kill, but you're not trying to fight this and let them know that you're in apartments too early and make them spam you down and kind of catch you out. So this is a good angle, especially for ecos, and it's another thing where when you're playing truck side, probably a good 20% of the time maybe, or more depending on how you feel, how comfortable you are, and how much you like to play with your apartments player, you want to try and get these aggressions in towards apartments. Again, make them worried about you trying to go for apartments, make them waste utility to clear out these angles, and most importantly, make them waste time trying to clear out apartments rather than just free clearing it, which is what will happen if you're too static. So again, the important part about truck side, don't be static. Play different play styles, be comfortable going for some sort of aggression late round, and know what you're doing. Now, the other aggression I like to do is the push in towards alt middle, the push into window. So what you want for this is to have your arch side player comfortable enough to throw a flash for you. It's not really that hard. It's actually very easy. You just need to be having good communication with your teammates so that your arch side player can toss that flash. And for me, I like to have him throw two. So he throws the first one and then a second one. The first one is to get me out so I can peek this angle here or here. And the second one is to get me back if I've gotten a kill and I want to fall off. So that's another great aggression. You just jump across middle and peek into alt and go for that sort of information. And with that, that's really all you need to know. A lot of the time, these angles, it's just about switching it up, playing smart, making your opponents worried, and especially when it comes to truck side, winning some gunfights and playing well. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.